and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. It's been 2 years since Ukrainians can travel to Europe without visas. Most of our citizens have already forgotten how was that to endure long queues at the visa centers and to collect tons of documents to obtain the desired permission to visit another country. As of today, over 10 million Ukrainians have already obtained biometric passports that allow visiting up to 130 countries. So what else has changed and what difficulties did the Ukrainians have to face? To talk more about this, we're joined in the studio today by Pavlo Kravchuk. He's an analyst at Europ Without Barriers. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you.
So how would you evaluate this 2-year period of Ukraine having a visa-free regime with the European Union?
I think that it's something outstanding, maybe one of the best things that happened to Ukraine during last years, because really a lot of people got a chance to visit other countries, a lot of people who didn't have such chance before, because according to some studies and surveys, approximately 30% of Ukrainians had never lived their regions, even not on the country. I mean, 30% had never lived their regions, and approximately 60% or even more had never lived the country.
Oh, wow. And now all of those people got a beautiful chance to travel to Europe.
Yes, of course, by now, during two years only passed, and not everyone used this chance. But as you told, 10 million people have already a possibility to start their travel today or tomorrow. And it's really good comparing to the situation when you should obtain visa.
So as I can see, the visa-free regime between Ukraine and the European Union not only gave the opportunity to the Ukrainian citizens to actually broaden their horizons and visit European cities and be pleasantly surprised by the beauty of them, but also to broaden the horizons of Ukrainian business.
Yes, of course. Businessmen get another chance to visit Europe, to have some negotiations, or maybe to get a contract, to see the experience of business in other countries. So, of course, it is influencing, but there is another side of this influence, which is probably in some way negative for business.
Which is?
Visa-free regime has stimulated the labor migration.
Right, the brain drain, right?
Yes.
Okay, how crucial is this issue right now for Ukraine? How fast are people living? How sick is the flow of the people living Ukraine for job opportunities at the European countries?
Well, this flow is quite big because the visa-free regime has coincided with some changes in policies of neighboring countries. Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, all they have some legislation changes during last years that are targeting Ukrainian labor force. That are intended to involve Ukrainian labor force, and I mean Ukrainian, not from other country, strictly Ukrainian. And the problem here is that nobody knows exactly how many people are leaving, how many people are returning, because there is no entity, state or non-governmental.
That is actually keeping track and statistics?
Yes, yes.
Nevertheless, there are job opportunities also appearing in Ukraine, and one of them is the aviation carriers market. Since the number of air carriers in Ukraine has grown a lot, since 2015, when we had the share of the low-cost air carriers, I don't know what percentage, but it grew by 13.5%, and now we have 27% of the low-cost air carriers. And that is a good sign, especially keeping in mind the fact that last year 2 Ukrainian-based low-cost air carriers appeared. How are they handling the competition with the European ones? Is it easy? Is it hard?
I think for anyone it would be hard to compete with European low-cost carriers because they have already developed infrastructure, they have already developed policies, and the newcomer will have hard times competing with them. But I definitely support the idea that development of aviation market is very good for Ukraine and its people, and that it influences a lot during last year the traveling models of Ukrainians. I can give here a very interesting example. The most recent data of Polish Border Guard Service. According to it, in the first quarter of 2019, more than 150,000 Ukrainians have visited Poland via air carriers. And it is more than the whole year of 2016. I mean, on the Polish market, we have growth from 50 to 100% a year.
Okay. Clearly, since the implementation of the visa-free regime between Ukraine and the European Union, the flow of Ukrainian citizens to the European countries has grown. What about the European citizens to the Ukraine? Has Ukraine boost its interest for the foreigners?
Well, I don't think there is a kind of direct dependence or connection between visa-free regime and European interest in Ukraine. Maybe some kinds of special connection, when people from Ukraine are visiting European Union and contact there with people from European Union, they become interested in Ukraine and they would like to visit it, but it's not really...
Is anything in Ukraine done on the governmental level to broaden the interests of foreigners in the country?
Well, we have some information campaigns. We have some very good examples of cultural diplomacy in Europe. For example, promoting Ukrainian literature, promoting some Ukrainian modern music bands. But regarding freedom of movement, the biggest step was had been made in 2005 when Ukraine solely has allowed to Europeans, Japanese and American citizens to visit Ukraine without visa 14 years ago.
Would you call the visa-free regime for Ukraine from the EU one of the major steps on Ukraine's path towards the European integration?
Definitely. I think that now we are in the middle of the process of developing people-to-people contacts and when such contacts are developed, there is always a new infrastructure is rising around these people's roots and contacts. So Ukraine becomes more and more integrated, deeper and deeper into European space, cultural, mental, economical.
We all want this to stay this way. Thank you so much for coming. That was Pavlo Kravchuk. He is an analyst at Europ Without Barriers. Thank you so much for watching UATV. Stay tuned for more.